Good morning, Year 3, and it's Monday. We're back after half term, and this is our first maths lesson, and we're starting off with a fact or fib of the day slot. I'm hoping that you will be able to freeze the screen and that you can see this document here, which is a sort of mind map about the fact that 11 times 5 makes 55, and on there we've got 16 number sentences. They're labelled A to P in brackets at the front. So for example, statement C tells you that 55 shared between 5 people would mean that each person got 11. If you think that fact is true, you write a T on the dotted line, and if you think it's a lie, you write F on the dotted line. This document will be attached as a PDF, so it can be printed off if you can do that at home, but I realise lots of you don't have that, so the simplest way of tackling this task is to simply list the letters A to F in your maths book with the TLP at the top of the page, and then next to the letters A, B, C, D, E and so on going down the page, just write T for true or F for false. And then we can go through the answers on a Zoom. So that's the first part of the lesson, fact of the day. And we're now going to go straight into our second part of the lesson, which is our first lesson on a very new subject in maths for us, which is the subject of fractions. And as we often do at the start of a new set of learning, we often start with a mind map. So you're going to need to get a set of colourful pens or pencils, whatever you'd like to use, and your maths book, and then you're going to need to put the TLP at the top of the page. Can I use and understand the vocabulary of fractions? And then if you write the word fractions going across a double page, I've used one box for each letter, and then put a nice bubble shape around the outside, and then we're good to go. So I'm going to pause the video for a minute while you go and get what you need. Okay, so we're ready to draw our first branch coming off our centre. And this first branch is going to be the language, just words that we need to know about fractions. The first word is fraction. What actually is a fraction? When we talk about a fraction of something in casual everyday talking, it means a small bit of something. And in maths we do mean a small bit of something or a part of something. But whatever we start off with, the something is called the whole thing. So you start off with a whole amount or shape or quantity, all of it, and then what you do with that whole is you share it, you divide it, or you split it equally. This is really important. So in maths, a fraction is part of a whole that has been shared or divided or split into equal parts. So it's got to be fair, a fair share. And we'll have a lesson on fair shares tomorrow involving Burglar Bill and Burglar Betty, sharing some things fairly. So a fraction is a small part of a whole, a something that you started off with, and it has to be shared fairly. And in year 2 you would have started working on fractions, and you should be very familiar with the names of some fractions. I'm going to start another branch. So if you join in with my mind map. And it's important to think about what could be the whole to start off with. And we're going to start off looking at shapes. So because we can use the squares in our book to draw them quite easily, so we don't need lots of equipment. So let's start off with fractions of shapes. So I'm going to start off by drawing a square, and I'd like you to as well. I'm not going to use a ruler, I'm going to be careful. And I'm going to make a square that's 2 centimetres long on each side. So it's got 4 little squares hiding inside it with the grey lines from your book. This is the hole. If I draw that square again, I can split fairly so that each side is exactly the same size and shape. I can halve it. So that's called halving. And you should be familiar with the fact that that's a half and that's also a half. I better write 1/2. I'm just going to show you something else. It being a square, I can split it diagonally. That's not a very straight line, but it would do. And that's also, there are 2 equal parts, which means that the fraction of the whole, each part is called a half. Now, in year 2, you would have learnt that we write a half like this. So we have the digit 1 above a line and the digit 2 below the line. Now why do we write fractions like that? That means a half of a whole. So that triangle is half of my square. The reason we write it like that is this bottom number is called, and you need to know this word, I'm afraid, year 3, the denominator. Make sure you spell it right. Denominator. D-E-N-O-M-I-N-A-T-O-R. How many letters is that? Let's check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Has your word denominator got 11 letters in it? So then the digit or number under the line is called the denominator because nom means name in Latin. And the name of this fraction is a half. And that 2 tells us we've split our shape into 2 equal parts. 1/2 you write with the 1 above the line because that tells you how many of the equal parts we're talking about. So in this example we're looking at 1 of our 2 equal parts, 1/2. So this number above the line is called the numerator. Now don't worry if you're thinking, I'm in a panic, I don't get these words, I don't understand. We're going to repeat all of this language so many times over the next 3 weeks or so. Anyway, year 3, technology being what it is, my silly phone stopped recording and I merrily carried on making my mind map, having just got to the point where I was talking about halves, and it stopped filming, so I've now got to refilm the second part of this lesson. So what you'll see is if you ignore this part of the map for now and focus back in on this green branch, and I'll carry on explaining from where the video cut out. So I'd literally just said that we were going to be talking about numerators and why the top number in this instance is 1 of the halves is green, but the whole shape has been cut into 2, so the denominator is 2. What you wouldn't have seen is the fact that I've now coloured in 2 out of the 2 halves are green on this one. So 2 halves are green. So the top number, the numerator, how many shapes I'm talking about, has changed to 2. So one of my 2 shapes is green here, 2 of my 2 green shapes is green here. So halves are something you should be familiar with. So if the denominator is 2, we're talking about halves. For this square here, the whole is still this same block that I showed you before, but this time I've split, shared and divided my square, my whole square, into 4 equal parts. And they are called quarters. And lots of year 3 children spell this word wrong, so have a close look at it while I'm talking about it, because it's got an R after the A. Q-U-A-R-T-E-R. Loads of children miss out that first R, year 3, so make sure you spell it right. So because my whole has been split into 4 equal parts, the denominator is 4, which tells me I'm dealing with quarters. And in my example, I have shaded one of those 4 quarters green. So if I'm talking about the green quarters, 1/4 of my whole shape is green. If we look to this fraction that I've written on this side, this time I'm talking about the white fractions of the square, and 3 of my 4 quarters are still white on this shape, so 3/4 of the shape is white. So the denominator is 4 because the names of these fractions are quarters. So I hope this is starting to make a bit of sense. Okay, I'm now going to talk about how, as well as fractions of shapes, we can have fractions of objects or things. So this first picture looks a bit like a letter C that's been chopped, but I'm going to show you what that was. I've already filmed this once, so I'm showing you again. So here's a plate, and here's a bagel. That's a whole bagel. So this is an object that I can halve or cut into as many equal portions as I want. The fraction's going to change its name if I have more than 2 equal pieces. So let's say that me and my husband Mike are going to share this bagel. So I've got my knife, and I've got to do my very best to try and make sure that there are 2 equal portions. And when I separate the whole, I've got 2 halves on my plate. And one of those pieces is called 1/2. And that's what that diagram there represents. So I'd like you to draw this mind map when we've finished. So that's an example of an object being shared into 2 equal parts. Of course, I could cut it again this way across. Let's say my sons George and Tom came home and they wanted an equal share of the bagel. And now we're talking about quarters, but I'm not going to write that down, I'm just showing you. There's a picture of a teapot here. I haven't got a teapot. What I've got is a jug. It's a bit hard to see, but in my jug there's some coloured liquid. I'll tell you what that is in a minute. And what I could do is I could halve the whole amount of liquid in my jug by pouring it so that each cup has an equal amount. Now I'm definitely not going to drink this year 3 because it's washing up liquid. You must never ever drink washing up liquid, you would get poisoned. So the whole liquid is being shared fairly between the 2 cups so that the 2 parts are equal. Give that one a little bit more, there's just a drip left. And I've filled the cups up to pretty much the same level. I think I've done a good job there of sharing it fairly. And there's a liquid, an amount of liquid that has been shared into 2 equal quantities. But I'm definitely not going to drink that, I would be mad. So we can share liquids, we can share foods, Oh dear, the bottom of my cup was wet and I've made a little mark on my mind map now. Never mind. On to the yellow branch. So we've got we've got fractions of amounts. So you can actually just have a quantity of something. And in my example, I've got the amount of 12 here, and I'm going to use something familiar to you to show what I mean. So let's tip these onto the page, and I've got some Smarties. Yummo. How many Smarties have I got? Why don't you count them, Year 3? Well, I think there are 12 altogether, so my whole quantity of Smarties in this instance is 12. That's my whole set of Smarties. A set is an amount of something. And I can easily split my set of 12 into 2 equal groups. And you can see that half of my 12 Smarties are blue and the other half are red. So this number sentence is saying that if I've got 12 things and I share them between 2 people, each person would get 6. Now if I chop something into 2 equal parts, I halve it. So I've written here that half of 12 is 6. So half are red and the other half are blue. But 12 out of 12 of my sweets are Smarties. Okay, so I'd like you to recreate this mind map in your book. I'm sorry about the smudges there from the bottom of my saucer being a bit damp. And I hope this sort of makes sense. And we're going to revisit fractions tomorrow, where we are sharing some food, a bit like this example here, between Burglar Bill and Burglar Betty. Bye, Year 3.